The grand arena of the Empire was the largest building Park had ever seen. It floated in space like a small moon, made of white stone and glowing blue metal. Thousands of ships surrounded it, bringing visitors from every corner of the galaxy. Today was a special day. The humans had finally arrived to sign a trade agreement with the powerful Empire. Stood at the back of the human group. He was not important. He was just an engineer who fixed machines on the diplomatic ship. He had short black hair, tired eyes, and a face that people forgot easily. He wore simple gray clothes, nothing fancy like the ambassadors in front of him. He did not want attention. He had spent the last 5 years running away from attention. The human group walked through the massive doors of the arena. Inside, the space was so big that clouds actually formed near the ceiling. Millions of seats rose up on all sides, filled with aliens of every shape and color. In the center was a floating sphere made of light. This was the fighting area, where the people settled their disputes through combat. Walked beside, she was the assistant to the human ambassador, a young woman with sharp eyes and a worried expression. She was one of the few people who knew small pieces of past, not everything. Nobody knew everything, but enough to make her nervous. "Stay quiet," she whispered to him. "Stay in the back, don't let anyone notice you." Almost smiled. "I'm an engineer, nobody notices engineers." "I'm serious," said. "The respect strength above everything. If they think we're weak, this whole agreement falls apart, but if they think we're threatening them—" She didn't finish the sentence. Understood. Humans were new to galactic politics. They needed friends, not enemies. The Empire controlled hundreds of star systems. Their trade routes could make humanity rich. Their armies could make humanity dead. The human group reached the center of the arena floor. Above them, on a floating throne made of crystal, sat the Emperor. He was old, with gray skin and 6 eyes that had seen 10,000 battles. His 4 arms rested on the sides of his throne. He did not move. He did not speak. He simply watched. Beside him sat his daughters. They had no princes, only princesses. And the most famous of them was the 3rd daughter of the Emperor. Was 7 feet tall. Her skin was purple like a bruise, and it shimmered when she moved. She had 4 arms like all, but hers were covered in golden rings that marked her victories in combat. She had never lost a fight. In 200 matches, she had broken the bones of champions from 12 different species. Some had died. They called these accidents. Nobody believed it was an accident. Right now looked bored. The human ambassador stepped forward. He was an older man named Director, with white hair and a diplomatic smile that never reached his eyes. He bowed to the Emperor and began speaking about friendship between species, about trade and peace and mutual benefit. Yawned, she did not hide it. Director continued his speech, pretending not to notice, but everyone noticed. The crowd began to murmur. Some laughed. The humans were boring them. Then raised one of her hands. Director stopped speaking immediately. "Father," said, her voice carrying across the entire arena, "you promised me entertainment today. These humans talk and talk, but they say nothing interesting. I was told there would be a champion's tribute." The Emperor finally moved. He tilted his head slightly. "You are correct, daughter. Before any agreement is signed, tradition demands tribute." He looked down at the humans. "You must offer a champion to face one of ours in ritual combat. This is our way." Director's smile became stiff. "Of course, Your Majesty, we were informed of this tradition. We have prepared." "I will fight," interrupted. She stood up from her seat and jumped down to the arena floor. The ground shook when she landed. She was even bigger up close, her muscles visible under her smooth purple skin. "I am so tired of fighting the same boring warriors. Let me see what a human can do." She began walking along the line of humans, looking at each one like they were animals at a market. The human soldiers stood still, trying not to show fear. They were Earth's best fighters, trained for years, equipped with the finest combat skills humanity could offer. But walked past all of them. She stopped in front of He had been standing in the very back, behind even the servants. He was the smallest adult human in the group. He looked up at the alien princess, who was almost 2 feet taller than him. Laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "This one," she said, pointing at with two of her arms. "He looks like he might cry before I even touch him." The crowd roared with laughter. The nobles clapped their hands together. What wonderful entertainment this would be. The mighty princess against the tiny human who looked like he had never fought anyone in his life. Director stepped forward quickly. "Your Highness, please choose one of our soldiers. This man is just an engineer. He is not trained for combat." "Then he should not be here," said simply. "I have chosen. Does he refuse? If he refuses, your people admit they are cowards and there will be no agreement." The arena fell silent. Everyone waited. Grab's arm, her fingers were shaking. "Don't," she whispered. "She'll kill you. She's killed before. We'll find another way." Looked at, then he looked at Director, whose face had become pale. He looked at the human soldiers, who were staring at the ground in shame because they had not been chosen. He looked at the millions of aliens watching from the seats above, all of them already laughing at how weak and small humans were. Finally, he looked at Princess. "It's fine," he said quietly. His voice was calm. "I'll do it." He removed his hand from his arm gently and stepped forward. Smiled with too many teeth. "Brave little thing. I will try to make it quick." She gestured toward the floating sphere of light in the center of the arena. "Come, let me show these people what humans are made of." As walked toward the combat sphere, he began rolling up his sleeves. It was a simple movement, something a worker might do before a hard job. But as the fabric moved up his arms, the aliens closest to him became quiet. His arms were covered in scars, not small scars, deep ones, burns that had healed badly, cuts that had gone to the bone, marks that looked like they came from claws, from blades, from things that did not exist on Earth. The guards near the arena floor exchanged glances. They had seen scars before. Warriors earned scars. But this human scars told a story of something different, something that had lasted a long time, something that should have killed him many times over. Noticed the sudden silence. She looked at its arms and frowned slightly, then she shrugged. Scars meant nothing. She had given plenty of scars to her opponents. She had never lost. "You won't last a minute, human," she announced loudly so everyone could hear. Stepped into the combat sphere. The light surrounded him, lifting him slightly off the ground. Zero gravity. The light to fight where strength and size mattered less than skill and balance. He settled into a stance that he had not used in 5 years. His weight shifted. His hands came up, not in fists, but open, fingers slightly curved. His tired eyes changed. The exhaustion was still there, but underneath it something else woke up. Something patient. Something that had been sleeping for a long time and was not happy to be awake. In the stands, an old combat master leaned forward. He had trained warriors for 60 years. He had seen every fighting style in the galaxy. He had never seen anyone stand like that. "Interesting," he whispered to himself. Entered the sphere across from. She cracked all 4 of her knuckles, one hand at a time. The sound echoed through the arena. "Any last words, little human?" she asked. Said nothing, he simply waited. The signal to begin would sound in 10 seconds. Closed her eyes, she could not watch. But everyone else in the arena watched very carefully. They wanted to see the princess crush another weakling. They wanted to laugh at the tiny human who thought he could fight. They had no idea what was about to happen. The signal sounded, and Park moved. The signal was a deep sound, like a bell made of thunder. It echoed through the grand arena and 1 million voices fell silent. The fight had begun. Princess did not waste time. She never did. In her 200 victories, most had ended in the first few seconds. She was fast. She was strong. She had 4 arms that could attack from 4 directions at once. No species in the galaxy could defend against that. She launched herself forward with all the power in her legs. The zero gravity made her fly like a missile. Her four arms spread wide, ready to grab the human from every angle. It was her favorite opening move. She called it the cage. Once she had someone in the cage, they could not escape. She would squeeze until bones broke. The human was standing still. Good, he was frozen with fear. They always froze. His arms closed around the space where had been standing, but was not there. He had moved, not backward, not to the side, but down and forward, slipping under her lowest arms with a twist of his body that should not have been possible. He was inside her guard now, so close that her long arms could not reach him properly. His eyes went wide. In 200 fights, no one had ever done that. Before she could adjust, his hand shot out. It was not a punch. It was something stranger. His fingers pressed into 3 exact points on her lower left arm, just below the elbow. The touch was gentle, almost soft. The arm went dead. Felt nothing. No pain, just nothing. Her lower left arm hung at her side like a piece of meat. She could not feel it. She could not move it. She screamed, not in pain but in shock. She spun around, swinging her 3 remaining arms at the human who had done this impossible thing. But he was already gone, floating away in the zero gravity, his face calm, his breathing steady. The crowd had stopped making any sound. 1 million beings sat in complete silence. They had never seen anything like this. No one had ever touched Princess in a fight. No one had ever hurt her. And this human, this tiny human who looked like he should be carrying boxes in a warehouse, had disabled her arm in less than 2 seconds. "What did you do?" demanded. Her voice shook. She hated that her voice shook. Floated in the zero gravity, keeping his distance for now. "Nerve cluster disruption," he said. His voice was quiet, like a teacher explaining something simple to a student. "Your species has 7 primary motor control nodes. I've studied 4 of them. That arm will not work for about 6 hours." Stared at him. Her mind could not understand what was happening. She was the greatest warrior of her generation. She had trained since childhood. She had killed champions who were legends in their own worlds. And this human knew things about her body that even her own doctors did not know. "Who are you?" she whispered. Did not answer, he just waited. In the stands had opened her eyes. She was watching now, her hands pressed against her mouth. She had heard stories about what had been before he became an engineer. She had not believed them. Now she was starting to believe. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. His 6 eyes were all focused on the small human floating in the combat sphere. "Interesting," he said softly. The word carried across the silent arena. Shock was turning into rage. Her purple skin was becoming darker, almost black. This was what happened when it became truly angry. Their blood rushed to their skin. Their muscles became stronger. Their minds became sharper. It was called the Fury, and it had won many fights when she was younger and less skilled. "You will pay for that," she growled. Her voice was deeper now, more animal. "I am going to tear off your arms and feed them to you." She attacked again. This time she was faster, angrier, more dangerous. Her 3 working arms became a storm of strikes, each one powerful enough to break steel. She did not try to grab him this time. She tried to hit him, to crush him, to destroy him. Moved through the storm like he was dancing. Every punch missed by a small distance. Every grab caught empty air. He did not look rushed. He did not look scared. He twisted and turned and floated through her attacks like water flowing around rocks. His face never changed. His breathing never quickened. 10 seconds passed, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Had thrown over 100 strikes. None of them had touched the human. She stopped, breathing hard. Even with the fury, even with all her power, she could not hit him. He was too fast. No, that was not right. He was not faster than her. He was just not where her attacks were. It was like he knew where she would strike before she did. "Stand still," she screamed. "Fight me properly." "I am fighting you properly," said. He was not even breathing hard. You are just not used to opponents who survive long enough for you to notice. The crowd began to whisper. Then the whispers became murmurs. Then the murmurs became something like fear. The humans in the arena stood up. They did not know what was happening either, but they knew their man was winning. Director's mouth was hanging open. He turned to his assistant. "Who is that man? Why don't I know who he is?" Did not answer. She was watching with tears in her eyes. She understood now why he had wanted to stay hidden, why he had taken a job fixing machines on a ship that went nowhere important. He had been running away from this, from what he was, from what he could do. In the combat sphere, attacked again. This time she tried something different. She used her environment, pushing off the walls of the sphere to change direction suddenly, attacking from angles that should have been impossible to predict. Predicted them all. He moved like smoke, like shadow, like something that was not quite solid. Every time thought she had him trapped, he slipped away. Every time she thought she understood his pattern, he changed it. And then, without warning, he went on the offensive. His hand shot out and touched her upper right arm. 3 precise points just like before. The arm went dead. Screamed again, 2 arms now. She only had 2 arms left. She swung wildly with her remaining arms, but was already inside her guard again. His fingers found her lower right arm. 3 more touches. 3 arms dead. Only 1 working arm remained. "Stop!" shouted. There was fear in her voice now, real fear. "How are you doing this?" Floated in front of her, just out of reach. "Humans are curious creatures," he said. "When we meet a new species, we study them. We learn their languages, their cultures, their histories, but we also learn their bodies. We learn where they are strong. We learn where they are weak." He paused. "We have been watching your people for 3 years. I have studied your anatomy for 2 of those years." His remaining arm trembled. Why would you do that?" "Because humans prepare for everything," said. "We cannot fly, we cannot breathe underwater, we cannot survive in space without machines. We are small and weak compared to most species, so we prepare, we study, we learn." His eyes met hers. "And then when someone threatens us, we are ready." He moved forward, swung her last arm desperately, putting all her strength into the blow. If she could hit him just once, just one time, she could win. 1 good hit would break his bones. 1 good hit would end this nightmare. Caught her fist. He did not block it. He did not dodge it. He caught it, wrapping his small human hand around her massive purple fist and stopping it completely. His arms shook with the effort. This was not easy. She was incredibly strong. But he held. Stared at her trapped fist, then at the human who was holding it. His feet were planted against the wall of the sphere, giving him leverage. His whole body was tense, every muscle working. He was not as strong as her. He should not have been able to stop her punch. But he had. "How?" she asked. Her voice was small now. Looked up at her. For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. It was not anger, it was not triumph. It was sadness, deep old sadness. "Because giving up is not something humans know how to do," he said. Then he touched her last arm, 3 points, gentle pressure. The arm went dead. Princess, the greatest warrior of her generation, floated helplessly in the combat sphere. All 4 of her arms hung useless at her sides. She could not fight. She could not defend herself. She could not even move properly without her arms for balance. The timer on the arena display showed 58 seconds. She had promised he would not last a minute. He had won in less than a minute. The arena remained silent. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to think. They had come to watch a princess crush a weak human. Instead, they had watched the weak human defeat the princess without throwing a single real punch. Floated in front of, he could finish this now. By law, he could do almost anything to her. She was his to hurt, to humiliate, to destroy. He did not move toward her. "Do you surrender?" he asked quietly. His eyes were wet, did not cry. It was considered the greatest weakness. but she could not stop the tears from forming. "Yes," she whispered, "I surrender." Nodded, he pressed a button on the sphere wall, signaling the end of the match. The zero gravity slowly faded, and they both drifted to the floor. As soon as they landed, the silence broke. The arena exploded with sound. Some were screaming in anger. Some were screaming in shock. Some were cheering because they loved a good surprise. The humans were hugging each other, crying with relief, shouting things that no one could hear over the noise. Walked toward the edge of the sphere. He did not look back at, he did not celebrate, he did not smile. He just looked tired. Was waiting for him at the edge of the arena floor. She was crying openly now. When he reached her, she grabbed his arms. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked. "Why did you hide?" Looked at his arms, then at the crowd screaming above them, then at the emperor watching silently from his throne. "Because I wanted to be done," he said. "I wanted to be nobody. I wanted to fix machines and drink tea and never hurt anyone again." He closed his eyes. "But they never let you be done. They always find a reason to drag you back." Did not know what to say, so she just held his arm and led him back to the human group. Behind them, Princess stood alone in the combat sphere. Her arms were beginning to tingle as the nerves slowly woke up. She could not stop staring at the small human walking away. In 200 fights, she had never wondered about her opponents. They were just obstacles to defeat. But now, for the first time in her life, she had a question she needed to answer. Who was Park? And what had happened to him to make those eyes so sad? The medical room was cold and white. Princess sat on a metal table while 3 doctors worked on her arms. They were using electrical machines to wake up her nerves faster. It hurt. She did not complain. The pain in her arms was nothing compared to the pain in her pride. She had lost. The words did not feel real. She kept saying them in her head, trying to make them true. She had lost. She, the undefeated princess, the terror of the arena, had lost to a human. Not just lost. She had been beaten so completely that she never even touched him. 200 victories and then this. A small, tired human with sad eyes had ended her perfect record in less than 1 minute. Her father had not spoken to her after the fight. He had simply left, returning to the palace without a word. That was worse than anger. Anger she could understand. Silence meant disappointment. Silence meant shame. One of the doctors touched a sore spot on her arm and grabbed him with her other hand without thinking. The doctor made a frightened sound, looked at her own hand wrapped around his throat and felt sick. She let go quickly. "I'm sorry," she said. The words felt strange in her mouth. She had never apologized to anyone below her rank. The doctor rubbed his throat and nodded, not meeting her eyes. He went back to work, but his hands were shaking now. Closed her eyes. What was happening to her? One fight, one loss, and she was already changing. She could feel it. Something had cracked inside her when the human caught her fist. Some belief she had held her entire life. She had always thought strength was simple. You were either stronger than your enemy or you were not. If you were stronger, you won. That was the way of the universe. But the human had shown her something different. He was not stronger than her. He was not faster than her. He did not have claws or armor or 4 arms. By every measure they used, he should have been weak. But he had won anyway. How? The question burned in her mind. How had he won? The door to the medical room opened. His oldest sister, Princess, walked in, was taller than older by 40 years with silver skin that showed her age. She was not a warrior. She was a politician, a thinker, the one who would become empress when their father died. "Leave us," said to the doctors. They ran out immediately. Did not look at her sister. She kept her eyes on the wall, waiting for the lecture that was coming. Always had something to teach her, some lesson about duty or honor or embarrassment to the family. But did not lecture. She sat down on a chair across from and was quiet for a long moment. "I watched the fight," finally said, 3 times. "Here to tell me what I did wrong?" asked. Her voice was bitter. "No," said. I am here to tell you what he did right." Finally looked at her sister. His face was serious but not angry. She looked curious, almost excited. "That human did not win because he was lucky," said. "He won because he knew exactly what he was doing. Every movement, every dodge, every touch. He had studied our people. He knew our bodies better than our own doctors. He knew your fighting style. He probably watched recordings of your old fights." "So he cheated," said. "He prepared in secret. That is not honorable." Laughed. It was not a mean laugh. It was surprised, like had said something very foolish. "Sister, there is no honor in being unprepared. There is no glory in refusing to learn about your enemy. That human did what any smart warrior should do. He studied. He planned. He found your weaknesses." She leaned forward. "And you know what else? He showed mercy." His hands tightened into fists. "Mercy. He humiliated me in front of 1,000,000 people." "He could have done much worse," said. "By our laws, he had the right to break your arms. Really break them, not just disable the nerves. He had the right to scar your face. He had the right to demand you crawl on the ground and beg for your life. He did none of those things." She paused. "He asked if you surrendered. He accepted your surrender immediately, and then he walked away." Thought about this. It was true. In her own victories, she had never been so kind. She had broken bones that did not need to be broken. She had left scars on opponents who had already surrendered. She had enjoyed their pain. She had thought this made her strong. Now she was not so sure. "What do you know about him?" asked. "The human, do we have information?" Pulled out a small data device. "Some. His name is Park. He is 34 Earth years old, which is about 70 of our years. He works as an engineer on a small diplomatic ship. He fixes machines. That is his official job." And unofficially, touched the device and a hologram appeared. It showed, but younger. His eyes were different in this image. Not tired, sharp, dangerous. He was wearing some kind of military uniform that did not recognize. 10 Earth years ago, there was a war in the outer colonies of human space, said. The humans do not talk about it much. They call it the Titan Campaigns. A group of colonies tried to break away from Earth's government. The fighting was ugly. Both sides did terrible things. Studied the hologram. The young man in the image looked like a completely different person from the quiet engineer she had fought. Was part of something called the First Response Unit, continued. They were sent to the worst places, the places where normal soldiers could not survive. They fought enemies that did not need sleep, did not feel pain, did not stop until they were completely destroyed. Enemies, other humans. Some, and machines, and things that were both. Touched the device again. A new image appeared. It showed a battlefield covered in bodies. Human bodies, machine parts, things that looked like nightmares given physical form. The war lasted 3 years. Out of the 500 soldiers in the First Response Unit, 12 survived to the end. Was one of them. Looked at the battlefield image for a long time. She had seen death before. She had caused death. But this was different. This was not a clean fight in an arena with rules and honor. This was slaughter. This was survival at any cost. The war ended, said. The colonies surrendered. The survivors were called heroes but refused all honors. He left the military. He disappeared for 2 years. Then he showed up as an engineer on a ship that nobody important used. She turned off the device. He has been running away from his past ever since. Understood now, the scars on his arms, the sadness in his eyes, the way he moved like he was always ready for an attack. This was a man who had seen too much death, a man who had been broken and put himself back together, but not perfectly. There were still cracks. Why did he fight me? Asked. If he wanted to hide, he could have refused. We would have looked weak, but he would have stayed hidden. Smiled slightly. I think that is exactly why he fought. He could not let his people look weak. He could not let you hurt one of the soldiers who were prepared to fight you instead. So he stepped forward. She stood up. He sacrificed his peace to protect his people. That is not weakness, sister. That is a different kind of strength. sat in silence after left. The doctors came back and finished their work on her arms. The feeling returned slowly, pins and needles at first, then full sensation. She could move again. She could fight again. But she did not want to fight. She wanted to understand. That night she went to her private training room. For the first time in years, she did not practice her attacks. Instead, she watched recordings of the fight with. She watched them over and over, slowing down each movement, studying each decision he made. He was not stronger than her. He was not faster than her, but he was smarter. He had turned her strength against her. He had used her size and her speed as weaknesses. Every attack she made gave him information. Every movement she made told him something. By the end, he had known exactly what she would do before she did it. This was not magic. This was not luck. This was skill. Deep, hard-earned skill that came from years of practice and study and experience. Began to see her own fighting in a new way. She had always relied on her natural gifts. She was bigger and stronger and faster than most opponents, so she had never needed to be clever. She had won with power, not with thought. Against someone like power meant nothing. The sun was rising over the arena when made her decision. She had never asked anyone for anything in her life. She had taken what she wanted. That was the way. But some things could not be taken. Some things had to be given. She would find the human engineer. She would ask him to teach her. Not fighting. She knew how to fight. She would ask him to teach her how to think like a human. How to prepare, how to study, how to turn weakness into strength. It would be humiliating. A princess asking a defeated enemy for lessons. Her people would laugh. Her father would be furious. But did not care anymore. She had learned something in that arena. Being undefeated meant nothing if you did not understand why you won, and she had never understood. Now she wanted to understand. She put on simple clothes, hiding her royal marks. She left the palace through a back door, and she began walking toward the human section of the station, where a tired engineer with sad eyes was probably trying very hard to be invisible again. She would not let him be invisible. Not anymore. The human section of the station was small and crowded. They had not given them much space because humans were not important, or at least they had not been important until yesterday. Was sitting in a tiny room with 3 diplomats. They had demanded a meeting immediately after the fight. They wanted answers. They wanted to understand what had happened in the arena. The lead diplomat was an old-named minister. He had gray skin, tired eyes, and the look of someone who had spent too many years dealing with problems. He sat across from with his 4 arms crossed. "Explain," he said simply. Took a deep breath. She had been preparing for this conversation all night. "What would you like me to explain, Minister?" "Your engineer," leaned forward. "He is not an engineer. No engineer moves like that. No engineer knows nerve clusters and fighting techniques that our own masters have never seen. Who is he? What is he?" Looked at the wall behind. There was a window there showing the stars outside. She thought about, probably sitting alone somewhere, adding that he had been forced back into the light. "He is an engineer now," she said. "What he was before, that is a different question." "Then answer the different question." Nodded slowly. She had permission from director to share some information. Not everything, but enough to satisfy them, enough to make them understand. "You think humans are weak," she began. "Everyone does. We are small. We have no claws, no armor, no extra arms. We cannot see in the dark like the. We cannot breathe poison like the. We die easily. We break easily. By every measure your people use, we should not have survived." Made a sound of agreement. This was all true. "But we did survive," continued. "For a very long time before we had technology, before we had weapons made of metal, we survived. Do you know how?" "Luck," one of the other diplomats suggested. "No," shook her head. "We survived because we never stopped. We were not the fastest animals on our planet. We were not the strongest, but we could do something no other animal could do. We could keep going. She stood up and walked to the window. The stars looked cold and distant. On Earth in the old times, humans hunted by walking. We would find an animal, a fast animal that could outrun us easily, and we would follow it. The animal would run away. We would walk after it. The animal would rest, thinking it was safe. We would keep walking. The animal would run again. We would keep walking. She turned to face the diplomats. This would continue for hours, sometimes days. The animal would run and run and run until its body gave up, until its heart stopped from exhaustion, and then the humans would walk up to it, still walking, and kill it. She paused. We did not catch our food. We tired it to death. His eyes had narrowed. He was beginning to understand something. This is what humans are, said. We are persistence hunters. We do not give up. We do not stop. No matter how tired we are, no matter how hurt we are, no matter how impossible the situation seems, we keep going. It is in our blood. It is in our bones. It is the reason we exist. She sat back down. That man in the arena, Park. 10 years ago, he fought in a war that should have killed him. He was sent to a place called Europa Station, a colony on a frozen moon. The station was attacked by enemies that did not need to sleep. Machines and people who had been changed into something that was not really human anymore. The diplomats were very quiet now. This unit was 12 soldiers. They were told to hold a single corridor until rescue arrived. They were told rescue would come in 6 hours. His voice became heavy. Rescue did not come in 6 hours. The ships were delayed. Then they were attacked. Then they were lost. How long did they hold? Asked quietly. 72 hours. Let the number hang in the air. 3 days and 3 nights. 12 humans against 800 enemies. Enemies that did not eat, did not sleep, did not feel fear. They just kept coming. She remembered the files she had read, the recordings, the things she wished she could forget. By the end of the first day, there were 10 soldiers left. By the end of the second day, there were 6. When rescue finally arrived on the third day, 3 soldiers were still alive. They were standing on a pile of bodies so high they could touch the ceiling. They were out of ammunition. They were fighting with knives, with pieces of broken machines, with their bare hands. She looked at was one of the 3. The room was completely silent. Even the hum of the station's machines seemed to fade. After the war, continued, the survivors were broken. Most of them could not live normal lives. They saw enemies everywhere. They could not sleep without weapons in their hands. 2 of them chose to end their own lives within a year. She felt tears forming in her eyes, but she kept speaking. Chose differently. He taught himself to be calm. He learned to fix machines instead of breaking them. He took jobs on small ships where nothing happened. He tried to become invisible. He tried to forget what he was. She wiped her eyes. But you cannot forget what you are. Yesterday, when your princess chose him, he could have refused. He could have let someone else fight, but he knew what would happen. The soldiers we brought were good, but they were not like him. She would have hurt them, maybe killed them. He could not allow that. She stood up again, suddenly angry, not at the universe, at the unfairness of making someone like fight again. So he stepped forward. He sacrificed his peace, his invisibility, everything he had built in the last 5 years to protect his people. And then he beat your princess without hurting her. He could have broken her arms. He could have killed her. You know this. But he chose not to. She walked to the door. You asked who he is. He is a tired man who wanted to stop fighting, a man who tried to be nobody, but when his people needed him, he became somebody again. She opened the door. That is what humans are, Minister. We keep going, even when we don't want to, even when it hurts. We never stop. She left the room, sat in silence for a long time. The other diplomats looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Finally spoke. I have been a diplomat for 90 years. I have met hundreds of species. I thought I understood the galaxy. He stood up, his old bones cracking. I did not understand humans, I do now. He walked to the window and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the planet that had made these strange, soft, unstoppable creatures. Tell the Emperor, he said to the other diplomats, that we should sign the trade agreement, all of it, whatever the humans want. But Minister, the princess. The princess lost because she did not understand what she was fighting, turned to face them. A human who refuses to stop is more dangerous than any monster, and they are not our enemies. They came here as friends. They want to trade with us, not fight us. He walked toward the door. If we are smart, we will make them our allies, because I do not ever want to know what they are like as enemies. Across the station, in a small room with no windows, Park sat alone. He had not slept since the fight. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Europa Station. He saw the corridor. He saw the faces of his friends dying one by one. The door opened. He did not look up. He knew who it was by the heavy footsteps. Princess walked into the room. She had to bend down to fit through the human-sized door. She looked strange in simple clothes, without her royal jewelry and marks. I did not say you could enter, said quietly. I did not ask, stood awkwardly in the small room. There was nowhere for her to sit. I need to. She stopped. She did not know how to do this. She had never asked anyone for anything. Finally looked at her. His eyes were red from not sleeping. He looked older than he had in the arena. What do you want, princess? Took a deep breath. I want you to teach me. The words hung in the air, stared at her like she had said something crazy. Teach you what? How to think like you do, how to prepare, how to study an enemy and find their weaknesses. She forced herself to keep talking. I have been fighting for 80 years. I have won 200 matches, but I never understood what I was doing. I just hit things until they broke. You showed me that there is more to fighting than strength. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a small, tired laugh. The princess of the empire wants a human to teach her how to fight. Yes. Do you know how crazy that sounds? Yes. Stopped laughing. He looked at carefully, seeing something in her face that he recognized. Shame, confusion, the desperate need to understand. He had felt those things after Europa Station. He had felt lost and broken and uncertain about everything he thought he knew. Please said. The word was difficult for her. She had never said it before. Closed his eyes. He thought about all the years he had spent hiding, all the peace he had carefully built. If he said yes to this, that peace was over. He would be pulled back into the world he had escaped. But he also thought about something else. A princess who could have hated him for embarrassing her. A princess who could have used her power to hurt him. Instead, she had come alone in simple clothes to ask for help. Maybe people could change. Maybe he could help someone avoid the path he had walked. I cannot teach you to fight, he said finally. You already know how to fight, but I can teach you to think, to prepare, to understand your enemies before you face them. His eyes widened. You will help me. On one condition, stood up. He was still so much smaller than her, but somehow he did not seem small. You will use what I teach you to protect people, not to hurt them. You will never again fight for entertainment, only for purpose. Thought about this. It meant giving up the arena, giving up her identity as a warrior princess, giving up everything she had known. She held out one of her hands. I agree. Looked at her hand, then he reached out and shook it. In that small room, on a station far from Earth, two people who should have been enemies became something else instead. They became teacher and student. And the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since the fight in the Grand Arena. The human trade agreement had been signed 3 days after his victory. The terms were better than anyone had expected. They opened their markets to human goods. They shared technology that humans had dreamed about for decades. They offered protection along dangerous trade routes. In return, Humanity offered something they had not expected to want: teachers. The news of victory had spread across the empire like fire. A small human had defeated the undefeated princess, not with strength, but with knowledge, with preparation, with a way of thinking that they had never seen before. Suddenly, everyone wanted to learn this human way of thinking. Had tried to stay invisible, but it was impossible now. Requests came from all over the empire. Warriors wanted to learn his techniques. Generals wanted to understand his strategies. Even scientists were curious about how humans approached problems differently. He refused most of the requests. He was still just an engineer, he said. Still just a man who wanted to fix machines and drink tea, but he could not refuse everyone. Princess came to him every day. She was his first and only student. The lessons were not what she had expected, did not teach her how to punch or kick or disable nerves. Instead, he taught her how to watch, how to listen, how to ask questions that revealed truth. "Your enemy will tell you how to defeat them," he said one morning, as they sat in the small human garden on the station. "You just have to pay attention." Frowned, "That sounds like magic." "It is not magic, it is patience." Picked up a small stone and held it in front of her. "What do you see?" "A stone." "What else?" Looked closer. "A gray stone with some white spots." "What else?" She was getting frustrated. "It is just a stone." Smiled slightly. "This stone came from a river on Earth. The white spots are minerals that were deposited over thousands of years. The smooth surface means it was carried by water for a very long distance. The crack on the side happened recently, probably when it was shipped here." He turned the stone over. "This stone tells a story if you know how to read it." He put the stone in her hand. "Everything tells a story. Everyone tells a story. If you watch carefully enough, you will know what a person will do before they do it." Looked at the stone with new eyes. She was beginning to understand. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. Changed. She became quieter, more thoughtful. She spent hours watching people instead of challenging them. She learned the names of servants who had worked in the palace for years without her ever noticing them. Her father, the emperor, watched this change with concern at first. His fierce warrior daughter was becoming soft, he thought. Weak. She no longer fought in the arena. She no longer boasted about her strength. But then he noticed something else. In diplomatic meetings, began to see things that others missed. She would lean over and whisper to him, "That ambassador is lying. Watch his lower left hand. It twitches when he says things he does not believe." She was always right. In military planning sessions, she asked questions that seemed simple but revealed deep problems. Why do we always attack from the north? Have we considered that our enemies expect this? The generals were annoyed at first, then they were impressed, then they were grateful. The emperor began to understand what his daughter had learned. She had not become weak. She had become a different kind of strong. One evening, 6 months after the fight, the emperor called to the palace. It was the first time they had spoken since the arena. Walked into the throne room alone. He was still wearing simple clothes. He still looked tired. But he stood straight and he met the emperor's 6 eyes without fear. "Human," the emperor said, "you have changed my daughter." Nodded. "She wanted to change. I only showed her how. She tells me that she will not fight in the arena anymore. This was the greatest honor of our family. Generations of princesses have proven their worth in combat. With respect, Your Majesty, there are other ways to prove worth." The emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up from his throne. He was very old, moving slowly, but he was still impressive. He walked down the steps until he was standing in front of. "You could have killed her in the arena," the emperor said. "You could have demanded anything: wealth, territory, her life. Instead, you asked if she surrendered and then walked away." "I did not come here to hurt people," said. "None of us did. We came to make friends." "Friends?" The emperor said the word like he was testing it. We do not have many friends, we have subjects, we have enemies, we have allies who serve us out of fear. But friends, he shook his head, this is not a concept we understand well. Thought about this. May I speak honestly, Your Majesty? You may. Friends are people who make you stronger by being different from you. They show you things you cannot see yourself. They tell you when you are wrong. They celebrate when you succeed and comfort you when you fail. He paused. Your daughter is becoming my friend. I hope that does not offend you. The emperor stared at him for a long time. Then, slowly, he did something that no ruler had done for a foreign species in 300 years. He bowed. The guards in the room gasped. Ministers who were watching from the sides fell to their knees in shock. The emperor never bowed. The emperor was the highest power in the empire. He bowed to no one. But he was bowing now. Thank you, the emperor said quietly, for showing mercy to my daughter, and thank you for showing her a better path. Did not know what to do. He had never expected this. He bowed back deeply, the way humans showed respect. When they both straightened, something had changed in the room. The relationship between humans and was no longer about trade or politics. It was about something deeper. That night there was a celebration in the palace. Humans ate together, talked together, laughed together. Director made a speech about friendship between species. Princess translated it into, her voice clear and proud. Tried to stay in the back, as always, but found him and dragged him to the front. You cannot hide anymore, she said. You are famous, accept it. I do not want to be famous. Too bad, she smiled at him. You are a hero. Looked at the crowd of humans and talking and eating and learning from each other. He thought about Europa Station. He thought about all the friends he had lost. He thought about all the years he had spent running away. Maybe this was why he had survived. Not just to fix machines and drink tea, but to be here, at this moment, building something new between two species that had almost become enemies. Maybe this was his purpose. Princess appeared beside him. She was wearing formal robes now, covered in symbols that marked her new position. Her father had created a special role for her, ambassador to humanity. She would spend the next year on Earth, learning everything she could about humans. Are you ready? She asked. Raised an eyebrow. Ready for what? I have been your student for 6 months. Now it is time for you to be my student, she smiled. It looked strange on her purple face, but it was genuine. I will teach you about our history, our culture, our ways of thinking. Fair is fair. Thought about this. Then, for the first time in years, he laughed. A real laugh, not a tired one. A laugh that came from somewhere deep inside. Fair is fair, he agreed. In the years that followed, the human alliance became the strongest in the galaxy. Two species that had almost fought instead learned from each other. Humans taught about persistence, preparation, and thinking differently. Taught humans about honor, tradition, and the strength that comes from family. And in bars and cantinas across space, a new saying spread among warriors. Never challenge a human who looks tired. They have already survived things you cannot imagine. Young children began asking their parents new questions. What is Earth like? Can we visit someday? Is it true that humans once chased animals until the animals died from exhaustion? The answers were always yes, yes, and yes. And somewhere on a ship traveling between stars, a tired engineer with sad eyes was finally learning to smile again. He had students now, friends, a purpose. He had tried so hard to be nobody. But the universe had other plans. In the end, Park became exactly what humanity needed. Not a warrior, not a hero, but a bridge. A connection between two worlds that had almost been enemies. And that, he decided, was worth coming out of hiding for. That was worth everything. The end.